Shri Ganesha Sharada Gurubhyo Namaha Agajanana Padmarkam Gajananam Aharnisham Anekadam Tam Bhaktanam Ekadantam Upasmahe. Welcome to all for this 12th chapter of Ganesha Purana. In the last chapter, we have seen the Vyasa who was immersed in the ocean of confusion during the in the beginning when he was about to start creating Ashtadasha Purana, that means the 18 Puranas. When he was about to start writing those 18 Puranas, in the beginning, because he was filled with the self pride that has and forgotten, due to that self pride, he had forgotten to worship Ganesha. He was immersed in the ocean of confusion. And in order to get a relief from that, he went to Satyaloka. He requested Brahma to find the reason why exactly this happened. Though he was so knowledgeable that and he could able to divide Vedas into four parts, but he could not able to write even a single line in the Puranas. Then Brahma tells it's all because of your self pride, a feel of self pride and egoist. So, because of that reason, and you forgot Ganesha, and that was the main reason Ganesha has created the obstacles for you. And as we discussed at that time, basically Ganesha creates an obstacle when we are filled with so much of self pride, which is always detrimental for the execution of any project, any activity that you carry out. And to carry out the activity, one need to do the worship of Ganesha, which is basically embedded in the very form of Ganesha, with a sharp eye, active listening, broad thinking, and digesting everything, and a flexible trunk. All these things are an indication of what exactly the Ganesha puja is. Continuing from that, after hearing all these things, Vyasa was interested in worshipping Ganesha. So then he asked how to start with the worship. And Brahma explains him in the previous chapter regarding the ritual to be followed and also gave him the Upadesha. That means he taught him the single syllable Ganesha mantra. In fact, for your information, I'm giving it's called as Gum. And the very word, a very syllable Gum. And if you try to pronounce it, you will feel that it is, though it is pronounced in your mouth, you will feel some kind of a vibration in the brain. And if you keep repeating that, that repetition must be having some kind of an effect on the brain. And because of that reason, you may be relieved of all the obstacles that are accumulated in your mind. The obstacles are created in the form of so many thoughts in your mind, and the pronunciation of this so called Bijakshara, these single syllable words are called as Bijaksharas, the seed mantras. And when we pronounce it uh, openly so that others can also hear it, it will make a sort of impact. And slowly from there, we need to make it more sensitive, bringing it to just the lip movement and then to pronounce it just in the mind. So, science behind the Bijakshara mantras and how they will go into make it, they must be making some kind of an impact which our forefathers were knowing about it. Probably our science is still not yet developed to that extent to understand how exactly it will make an impact on the brain. So, hearing all those things, Vyasa was so happy. But one point at this instance, that though I had shared with you the mantra, please do not start doing any recitation. Please look out for a guru who has already practiced it and knows in detail about the rituals and has realized this mantra, and request them to give that mantra to you. Only then, under the mastership, under the in the presence of a guru and the presence of a master, if you practice this mantra, then the possibility of getting a realization will be more. Until you get the realization, you should not share it with anybody else. Only after you get the realization, you would have reached the destination, then you can share it with anybody else. And at any time, especially matters related to the spirituality, should not be involved in a discussion with people who are not interested in that. Because with such kind of a debating, only you will get disturbed, not the other person. For your own welfare, better the path of liberation, the spiritual path, should always be treaded alone. So let's continue. Sutta continued the story. After he had heard the speech issued from Brahma's mouth, the sage was filled with great rapture and he questioned Brahma again. Vyasa asked Brahma, O Brahma, having drunk your ambrosial words, I have been attentive. I want to hear about this great mantra. Who has recited it? Did he gain success from Gajanana? As you are my only teacher, please resolve my uncertainty. Whenever we get something new, the first thing that comes to our mind is, did anyone practiced it before? Did they got the success? Because if someone has practiced, someone whom I know practiced it in the past and got succeeded in that, only then I will also get some confirmation in my mind. At least my mind will be more stable in receiving that particular mantra. Brigu, who was telling this story to King Somakanta, he continues. So here there will be multiple people who are taking part in telling this story. So please be aware of it. O excellent king, when he was questioned in this way, that means when Brahma was questioned in this way by the sage Vedavyasa, Brahma, the best of speakers, spoke tenderly to the stooped Vyasa. Brahma said, good, you have asked really well. That means you now possess merit. Those who are without merit, Brahmin, they show no concern for hearing a tale. And whenever someone is hearing a tale, it is essential in between, at every point, they should be asking the question, and that question need to be answered by the teacher, the person who is telling the story. Though in this media, these are not possible. In general, if you are hearing the story from somebody else, if you don't ask the question and that person who is telling the story, if they don't answer, they, both of you are called as dumb and deaf. So it is very much essential to go through a question answer session. So let's continue. I will teach you the correct method of worship, for nothing can be kept from a devoted student who is very wise. You have been told that the illustrious Gananayaka exists in the syllable Om. Those not wishing for any obstacles worship Vinayaka. Here, Gananayaka, Vinayaka, these are all different names of the same supreme deity Ganesha, who is formless and only for the sake of ours. For because we cannot imagine someone who is formless, so we imagine Ganesha in the form of syllable Om, or in the form of a elephant headed god. That's up to our choice to imagine that. But basically, God, the supreme deity, has no form. Those not wishing for any obstacles, those who do not want to end up in an obstacle, they worship Vinayaka in this way in respect of all tasks. Because if they do not, he causes, Ganesha will going to cause obstacles. Accordingly, there are mantras found in every agama which possesses the group of syllables for the beginning Om and the syllables for the concluding Om. That means in every syllable, before expressing that syllable or after expressing that syllable, the Om syllable is always used because it's such a sacred one, and it is the fundamental among all the bijaksharas. But others give no results at all. If you don't use it along with Om, it will not provide the result. Gananayaka encompasses everything that exists and even that does not exist, both manifested and unmanifested. Accordingly, all the gods, siddhas, sages, demons, and kinnaras, celestial singers called as Gandharvas, wandering wandering bards. That means those are called as the rishis, snakes, yakshas, guhyakas, humans, as well as all the worlds, both moving and unmoving, are worshippers of Ganesha. Hence, there is certainty no one is superior to Ganesha. Everybody here, what they mention Kinnara, Kimpurusha, Yaksha, Sarpa, snakes, Guhyaka, and human beings. These are all the different races which is assumed to be once existed on this earth. And people believe that they are existing even today, maybe in either a different dimension, or probably they are existing, but our senses could not able to sense their very presence around us, because our senses are limited to only five senses, and they may be visible in a different sense. Anyway, I will tell you a certain traditional tale as to how Ganesha was caused satisfaction through the recitation of this king of mantras. Once upon a time, when due to the force of fate, cosmic destruction had begun, the mountains were shattered by winds and fell in every direction. 12 suns were burning. These are called as Dwadasha Aditya. 12 suns were burning and having dried up the great ocean. And a huge fire garlanded with flames burnt everything. Generally, it is assumed that once the Brahma's day is completed, that's a different timing calculation, which I will tell you some other time. Once the Brahma's day is completed, there will be a pralaya that will be happening. It's like during that pralaya, first the Samvartaka clouds, they will going to shower the earth, and the whole earth will be covered with water. And then this Dwadasha Adityas will going to dry up the earth. So ultimately, the purpose is that every creation that was created by the creator Brahma will simply going to vanish, and nothing will going to survive. And then for 1000 Mahayugas, that's quite a long period, 1000 Mahayugas. So throughout that period, it is considered as the Brahma's night. And after that night, Brahma will start the creation again. Unlike what we saw in the movie, some survivors will be there and with whom the earth will continue. No, when the pralaya happens, when the last day comes, everything will going to be completely destructed. 12 suns will be burning, having dried up the entire great ocean, and a huge fire garlanded with flames burnt everything. Then the great Samvartaka clouds showered water everywhere, their jets of water resembling those which come from an elephant's trunk. Excellent Brahmin, the oceans and this is addressing to Vyasa. O excellent Brahmin, the oceans and the rivers overstepped their boundary. In this way, everything was destroyed, beginning with Brahma down to the immovable things. And so, when this evolved, composed of Maya, had been destroyed. So, whatever we see, this whole creation, the entire visible things that we see, is everything together, put together, as told by Shankaracharya, it is considered as Maya. The reason is, as I mentioned earlier itself, whatever is visible for us, that means what is visible to our eyes, what we can hear, what we can taste with our tongue, what we can sense with our nose, what we can sense that it smell, we can smell with our nose, what we can touch. So these five senses are called as gnanendriyas. That means these are the five senses which tells us about the existence of the world. But does the world is only this much? Not necessarily, because what we can sense is only what our senses could able to recognize. But what our senses could not recognize, we cannot see, we cannot even get the very presence of them. But basically, do they exist? Shankaracharya tells that everything is simply Maya. That's because, for example, you take any item, You take, for example, a metal spoon. A metal spoon or a plastic spoon is made up of some composite material. And that composite material is basically having certain atoms of a metal or some hydrocarbons, and the atoms are consisting of protons, neutrons, and electrons in a perfect proper combination. It is because of the proper combination it had either become a hydrocarbon, or it had become a gold or a silver or a ferrous item or anything. It's because of the proper combination of those protons and neutrons, electrons. But why the number of protons and electrons are only in that number, nobody can explain. If the number differs, it changes from one material form to another material form. But why exactly it is in that form, nobody knows. And what is beyond that? What is proton, neutron, electron are made up of? And how they have the mass? Nobody knows anything about it. So that is where comes the concept of Brahma. Means that they are all basically in the form of an energy or something. Energy is a word which we know. Basically, they are all made up of some unknown thing, and likewise, the whole world is made up of only that unknown thing, for which we gave the name as Brahma. You can give any name for that, you can refer it with any name, and we refer it with a syllable in the form of Om. What exactly it is, everybody is in search of it, and that same unknown thing worldwide. Theist used to call that as God, and atheist used to say, no, that doesn't exist. You cannot say, those who say it exists, they are called as theists. Those who say doesn't exist, they are called atheists. And in India, people simply search for it. They know that there is something big, and from that something, the protons, neutrons, electrons, and from that, the atoms, from that, the material, from that, all the matter, what we see is existing. So the matter is seen, are smelled, are heard, are tasted, are touched only by our five senses. That is why they are existing in our brain as a idea. The matter exists as something by the recognition through our senses in our brain, and that is why, since it is existing in the brain we get an image, and we say that this is a spoon, this is a plate. So that is why that identification is what Shankaracharya used to call it as Maya. Basically, neither a spoon exists nor a plate exists. What exists there is either the hydrocarbons or some kind of a material, some kind of a matter that's made up of some completely unknown thing. Okay, so let's continue that all that Maya that was in some visible sense, something that can be sensed through our senses, had been destroyed. Gajanana alone existed somewhere, because Gajanana is the supreme deity whom I just referred it as equivalent to Brahma, having assumed a form much smaller than the atomic particles. Then after a, that's what exists within the atom. So he is in that particular form, which is basically formless. Nobody can imagine the form of what exactly the protons, neutrons, electrons are made up of. Then, after a very long time had passed in a state of intense darkness, that's the night of Brahma, there appeared the one syllable filled with the Brahma's sound. It existed once again in a modified form consisting of bliss, and then having become an evolute in conjunction with Maya, it became Gajanana. It took the form in order to create the whole world. Straight after that, the qualities sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are the trigunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are born out of the Brahma. They came into being from the Brahma, it's the supreme deity Gajanana. And after that arose the three gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And through his Maya, the entire triple world, both moving and unmoving, that which is living, non-living, moving, unmoving, all kind of things are being created. Then, because of his Maya, the three gods rambled about confused. Sage Each was anxious to see and to question his own father who created them. That Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, they wanted to question their father, one Gajanana, who had created them, to know why exactly, because they wished an answer to the question what duties these three people need to perform in the beginning. It's a personification of one who is a creator, one who maintains the world, and one who will going to destroy the world. And correspondingly, they are the personification of sattva, rajas, and tamoguna. Having investigated 21 heavens from top to bottom, back and forth across the sky, they subsequently came to the underworld. Means they keep on searching for him everywhere. It is assumed that there are seven worlds, probably in different dimension above this visible world, and there are seven worlds below this visible world, which are not visible for the ordinary human beings. But still not seeing the supreme deity or supreme self, they performed a severe austerity. For 1000 years, they devoted themselves to uttering mantras and fasting. Exhausted, wearied, and pondering, they returned to earth in order to investigate forests and groves, rivers, seas, mountains, peaks, and caves. They were searching for the supreme deity everywhere. However, they saw a huge lake filled with many aquatic animals that was surrounded by trees and had a great variety of birds. It reverberated with the sounds of ducks, swans, geese, cranes, which delighted in eating fragments of lotus root fibers. After they had bathed and rested on its bank, crossed it and went forward to the great lake. It rippled with many waves and was exceedingly dangerous for men to cross, filled as it was with crocodiles and the large fish. Then they saw a terrible sight resembling the fire of cosmic destruction. So they came to this pond, and it was very difficult for ordinary human beings to cross. These are three divine beings, they could able to cross it. And then they saw this terrible sight of which is resembling the brilliance and the fire of the entire cosmic destruction, such a huge fire, like the great brilliance, the such a wonderful sight of light in front of them. Before them was a mass of fiery energy resembling a myriad of suns, fiery energy which took away their sight. They could not able to see anything. So they become extremely anxious, but they emerged from the midst of that fiery energy by the way of the sky, worn with hunger and thirst, puffing and panting constantly, reviling and cursing themselves, they became very much perturbed. Then Ganesha, who is a overseer of the world, who is filled with a surplus of compassion for these three people, and who knows the meaning of everything, appeared to them in a form pleasant to their eyes and the mind. Because initially the light they were seeing, their normal eyes, they could not able to see the light. So now Ganesha has appeared to them in a pleasant form in front of them. The filaments of red lotus were surpassed by the splendor of his feet, fingers, and nail. That was the color of his feet, finger, and nail. And the disk of the sun at dawn was surpassed in mass of splendor by his red garment. The peak of Hemadri was surpassed by the splendor of the texture of his girdle. He had four handsome arms represented resplendent with spear bow. That means he was holding the spear, bow, shield, and the lance, and he possessed a beautiful nose, a lotus-like face, which in beauty surpassed the full moon, and beautiful eyes surpassing the lotus. So that was explaining the beauty of Ganesha. He was splendid. He was splendid day and night. His head was shining with a Adam, surpassing many suns in brilliance, and he wore an upper garment surpassing the beauty of the heaven, embossed with its multitude of stars, glorious with a single tusk, surpassing in splendor the tusks of Varaha. He had superb tongue, more fearful than those of the world protectors, Airavata, and so forth. Varaha was one of the incarnation of Vishnu. It's basically the pig, which and the particular tusk of the pig, and even the tusk of Airavata, which happens to be the best among the elephants, which is the vehicle for Indra, and Ganesha's tusk, because Ganesha was also having the same Gajamukha, having the face of the elephant. His tusk was much more wonderful, beautiful than them. And thus ends the 12th chapter of Upasana Khanda of the glorious Ganesha Purana, called as explanation of our expression, explaining the beauty of Ganesha. So, like this, in this particular chapter, so the Trimurtis, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, as soon as they are created, they don't know what is the purpose for which they are created, because at that time the whole world got spoiled and the new creation was about to start. Now, there may be a question in our mind: when the new creation was about to start, how come they find the earth and how come they find all those birds, everything? But that's only an explanation of the bard. In order to add color to his explanation, he says that there existed a pond and they crossed the pond and they see the brilliance. But what exactly could be the truth is that there was nothing existing in this world. So they saw the brilliance, and in the mid of the brilliance, they saw the beautiful spot of Ganesha taking the form of an elephant god. And then explanation of his beauty continues. Namaste Sharada Devi, Kashmira Puravasini, Twamaham Prarthaye Nityam, Vidya Danancha Dehime. Goodbye.